we are metaphor, that we're made of metaphor. And so the issues that we have and the problems that we have with people are metaphors for the places where our brains are tied in knots and need to be untied and untangled so that we can become whoever it was brains were meant to be in their snowflake, completely unique incarnation in the world.
In a world moving faster than our minds were designed to handle, mental health is becoming one of the defining challenges of our time. Welcome to Mental Health in a Modern World with holistic health practitioner Greg Schmaus. After overcoming severe anxiety and OCD in his own life, Greg dedicated the past decade to helping others heal through a fully integrated approach to mental health, combining lifestyle coaching, psycho-emotional healing, mindfulness, and archetypal work. Over the years, he's facilitated thousands of sessions, guiding people back to peace, clarity, and a deeper connection with themselves. Each week, Greg shares powerful solo insights, conversations with leading voices in holistic healing, and immersive live coaching sessions that take you inside the healing process itself. New episodes every Friday. Follow the show and start reclaiming sovereignty over your mind in a modern world. Here's Greg.
Sarah, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, Greg, thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's such an honor to have you. You've been such a huge influence on my personal healing and my professional career. So it's really just an honor for me to have you on the show. So I'd love to just start just to give people a little bit of a background of your journey, of your work, because you have such a diverse area of expertise. So I'd love to just start with a brief little background, if that's okay.
Yes, of course. My background is that I became intensely interested in neuroscience when I was starting to study nonviolent communication back in the 2000s. I had this transformative experience with nonviolent communication, and then because I'm always like, how did that happen? What was that? I went out and started looking at the new research that was coming out from the decade of the brain, from the world of fMRIs being used to look at how relationships are constructed and how we affect one another. I think probably it was incredibly healing because my mom, in the aftermath of the trauma that formed her when she was a tiny little person, sort of was adamant in insisting that she had no effect on me. So I was like, look, we have an effect on each other. I was so excited. Although I had no neuroscience background, I just became an absolute, diving in person and ended up publishing a book with Norton. Now, 3 books with Norton Publishing, W.W. Norton, despite the fact that I have no neuroscience degree. So all hail the amateurs, those lovers those passionate lovers of subjects who can dive in and actually begin to tease things apart and make them usable for the common person outside of the lab. That's my world and my life, and the 2 modalities that I am most interested in. I love healing trauma. I love healing trauma because I would have loved for my mom's trauma to be healed and my dad's trauma, everybody that I love. But I also love change. I deeply love experiencing my own brain changing and supporting other people to have their brains change. So the 2 modalities that I work in that are healing modalities are resonant language and resonant healing, which I developed based on relational neuroscience, and constellation work, which I love because it provides this absolutely gorgeous social metaphor for people to begin to have a sense that their experience is captured and reflected by other humans.
And can you share with us, what is resonance? How would you define resonance? I remember in one of our constellation courses, you defined it so beautifully. So I'd love for you to touch on that for a moment.
I wish I could touch the past beauty. I'm like, what did I say? So resonance is the way that human bodies vibrate with one another, and the way that we can kind of capture and ride and augment and be with that those waves of energy that move between us, which are our emotions. How are we with them? How do we sit with them? How do we reflect them in words? And what neuroscience shows us is that the more that we have a sense that another human gets us, the more our bodies relax and change and reach for. I kind of see our human brains as having been born to do something beautiful. Each person's brain is completely unique, just like snowflakes. We are blocked by trauma and by a lack of accompaniment. And when we begin to allow ourselves to resonate with one another instead of shutting it down in order to make it through a difficult world, then all of a sudden, all kinds of very interesting and important things start to happen.
Yeah. I remember what you said in the
Oh,
emergent constellation training. You said that resonance is the balance of precision and warmth.
oh, that's beautiful. Yes, it
I'm
is.
wondering, could you expand on that a little bit? Because after that class, I remember exploring where I've experienced that, but also where I've experienced precision without warmth or warmth without precision.
Yeah.
So I'd love for you to just unpack that a little bit.
Yeah. Our human brains do not naturally give words to human emotions. They have to be in relationships where other people are giving words to human emotions. I mean, I think this can happen through art as well, like reading books and certain kinds of music and paintings. But when the correct word is given to an emotion that a human is feeling, that person's body relaxes.
Mm.
And it's like the message has been received and they get to move on to whatever's next. And there are non-specific words for emotion that people use all the time because it dials the intensity down. Words like worry or troubled, or saying things like this is problematic or that's a dilemma, or I feel a little upset about this. All of these are words that we use constantly that don't actually have a clear emotional tone. If you think about the primary colors in a crayon box, in the crayon box of emotions, the primary colors are fear, sadness, and a sense of a need for connection, um, anger and disgust, and then we get some happiness and joy. But if we don't actually get into the words that are connected to those primary colors, like sorrow is a word that's really connected to one of those primary colors, or rage is a word that's connected to a primary color, terror is a word that's connected to a primary color. Those are kind of high volume emotions. If we turn it way back down, then, anger, frustration, and annoyance, and then like, so as we begin to capture with precision, what area of the brain, because these emotions actually happen in different areas of the brains and have different neurotransmitters that run them, and the body gets even more calm and takes bigger steps. I'm a person who loved fairy tales, and in fairy tales when I was little, there were 7-league boots you could put on, and you'd take one step and it would carry you 7 leagues. And I kind of have the sense that that's what resonance does when we're actually, being both warm and precise. So I love it that you had the experience of thinking about warmth without precision. Oh, honey. Oh, my darling. Yeah. Well, of course you would feel this way, just like not much there, right? And and then precision without warmth. Would you like some acknowledgement of anger? It's like, oh, where's a person? We need a person.
Right.
So yeah.
That's really beautiful. And one of the things that I notice when you're offering resonance is the use of a lot of metaphor.
Oh, metaphor. We are bodies built of metaphor.
And is that what creates the relaxation in the body when someone's nervous system feels understood through metaphor? Is that what's happening?
Well, if you look closely at whatever metaphor that you're offering, it's offering feelings energies and needs energies in a nice little package that also carries the flavor of that other person in relationship to us. We really get to have the experience of them stepping into a relational space where they're using their imagination to wonder about what things are like for us. The researchers say that we use a metaphor once every 6 words when we're talking, just generally. That the metaphor is the unseen ocean that we are always swimming in.
Yeah, beautiful. The other component that you mentioned is accompaniment.
Yeah.
And, as someone who for 10 plus years has been in the coaching world,
Ah,
there's a huge desire to be the advice giver.
oh,
And so, one of the things that I've really learned from you and learned through nonviolent communication is some of the dangers of advice giving, especially without consent, and how accompaniment is really kind of what the nervous system's looking for rather than a solution,
mm,
advice, or a fix. Can you explain why that's the case and what's happening kind of like under the surface when
yeah.
someone's receiving accompaniment versus advice?
What a great question. We're sort of sold a bill of goods about being individuals. We're given like lots of messages that we're supposed to be independent and do things on our own. We're supposed to tie our shoes on our own early. We're supposed to be able to cross the street by ourselves responsibly early. We're supposed to be able to figure out the answers on our math test by ourselves. It's like all kinds of messages that we have that we are individuals and not social animals. But in fact, humans are exquisitely social. For example, we have particular neurons in our skin that are devoted to feel particular nerves that are devoted in our skin to feeling other people's body heat. Like these are nerves that do not register temperatures over 105 degrees and do not Fahrenheit and do not register under 80, 82 degrees Fahrenheit. It's like they only light up at those temperatures. If we're sitting next to a hot stove, those nerves do not light up. If we're sitting next to a warm rock in the summer sun, unless it's the right temperature, those neurons do not light up. So we have a knowing about whether or not there are beings who are close to us. And the companion animals who are most important to us, cats and dogs, have body temperatures that are right in that same area as well. And there's something immensely comforting about their presence as well.
Mm.
But we're made to be in community. We're made for our brains to work with other brains and have a shared load experience. So I don't think it's any accident that that the main neurotransmitter for stress is cortisol, and cortisol is the main neurotransmitter for what it's like for us to be alarmed and alone. So with this, keeping this in mind, that we are immensely social, we relax when we have a sense that there's somebody with us. And we can begin in a shared load situation, we can begin to brainstorm and discover exactly the best path for us, given the resources and limitations of our present experience and the resources and limitations of the other people in the experience. It's like we move into solution once accompaniment is present and we can really feel, oh, there's somebody with me. With advice, we're not stepping into that territory. We're trying to get to the good stuff, which is the brainstorming and the solutions and the really great strategies without going through the emotional labor of self-regulation and attuning to somebody else, allowing ourselves to make them the center of our attention. Because when we allow ourselves to make the other person the center of our attention, our nervous system starts to resonate with their nervous system, our heartbeat starts to align, our heart rate variability starts to align, our blood pressure starts to align, everything, and our brains start to create the same patterning and use patterning and brainwave patterning. It's not the thing we're taught to do. We're not taught to stop and resonate with somebody else. We're not taught to stop and attune and make the other person the center of our emotional attention.
Yeah.
So then what happens when we step over the part that's deeply relational is that we get a spike of cortisol when somebody gives us unsolicited advice, spike of cortisol. The thing is also true if somebody doesn't want to go into that territory and we go in there, they can also have some stress and be like, what are you doing? I only want advice. I don't want to talk about emotion. And then we get to listen to them. It's always with consent that we're moving. Consent and co-creation. Like, would you like a metaphor guess? Is it okay if I attune to you? Is it okay if I make you the center of my attention for a moment? Is it okay if I talk about emotions or ask about emotions? Because that territory in between problem and advice is an unfamiliar territory. The territory of accompaniment is not a familiar territory for most of us. And we got to know what it's like, and we're like, where can I find more of this? Why aren't people doing it?
Beautiful, beautiful. What was coming up for me when you were sharing is when we're in that stressed state or state of pain, when someone comes in and kind of like skips the step of accompaniment or resonance and goes right to advice, it's kind of like trying to pull someone out of their state rather than meet them where they're at in their experience.
Yeah.
And so is that what's creating like the almost like that stress response or the stress hormones?
Yes, I think it's that we're getting that clear information that somebody has left us. It's like, I'm not going to attune to you. I'm not going to resonate with you. I'm stepping right over this area. You're here, but I'm going to go over here and tell you what I think you should do.
Yeah. Beautiful. And, last year when I had participated in your Emergent Constellation program, which was really incredible, up until that point, I had been coaching people for 10 plus years. And up until that point, it was always this sense of I'm working with an individual. And now, since taking a lot of your training, you're working with way more than an individual.
Yes.
You're working with a whole field and a whole constellation. So can you unpack that a little bit? The transition from this perception of I'm working with this singular entity of one person to I'm really working with a greater whole here.
Yeah, that's such a great thing. Well, it kind of takes us back to this idea that we're socialized to believe that we are alone. We're not socialized to not go, oh, I'm walking through the world and my mom and my grandparents and my ancestors and my dad and his ancestors are all behind me and are contributing to the epigenetic profile around my DNA, We're just not used to thinking about ourselves as like that each individual is a convergence point for their own past, present, and future, their family's past, present, and future, and their society's past, present, and future. Each of us are carrying, just as in a family system, we carry a different role. Somebody's the golden child, somebody's the rebel. In society, we carry these different roles. That once we get a sense of any unconscious commitment we've made to only being that role, we can begin to kind of loosen. I have an image of, the drill that you can turn backwards and they become unscrewers, the unscrewing drills, that we can start to take off the plate that's been screwed down by our society or our family or our culture. And we can begin to say, oh, yeah, look at me and look at me there. I'm carrying the rebel responsibility. What happens if I just acknowledge that, yeah, that's something I carried, something I love. And what if I'm bigger than it?
Beautiful. One of the things that I really appreciated, I had a huge imprint in some of the training that we had done together, is the impact and the imprint of the mother and the father,
Mm.
and the different imprints that they carry in terms of the mother and more of our inner world, the father and more of the world outside of us. Can you touch on that a little bit?
Yeah. Well, first of all, the research shows that it doesn't matter what gender a person is. What matters is what role they're playing in a baby's life.
Right.
And if there's just one parent, then they're playing both roles. But if we have
Mhm.
two parents, then the first parent, the one that's primary for the baby's, for responding to the baby most of the time, that is the mother person, the mothering person, the mother. The mother can be male. The mother can be non-binary. And then we've got the second parent, who we call the father, but the father can be female. The father can be non-binary. It does not matter at all what gender people are. What matters is what role they play. So with the mother's creating the way that the child learns to regulate themselves, and whether or not the child can expect to be met in a sweet way in interpersonal relationships, and learning how to care for the self, learning to care for others. Lots of stuff about the care circuit and the sweetness of connection and relationship, or the lack of sweetness in relationship, and the conviction that we're bad. Yes, those things also come with mothers. As I mentioned, my mom was immensely traumatized. So all kinds of strange things came with trauma. Then you've got the father, the second parent. That person's responsibilities, if we're lucky, is playing in an entirely different way with the baby. And they are so important for this. When a father or second parent plays with the baby, then the baby experiences peaks of a delight, just, peals of laughter that come when babies are playing, and how they giggle and giggle and giggle, and that experience of being brought into peak delight, and then, gently being accompanied in a calming, and then a peak delight, and then a calming. That's the essence of play. And, and I'm just thinking of not just my husband, but my first son, adopted when he was 15. He actually came to the hospital when my second son, my birth son, was born. So he was there from the very beginning of this baby. He was the first person outside the people who were in the birth room to see the baby, and he would play with the baby. He would Nick's little fist, and he would make him punch him in the jaw, and then he would follow, would giggle and giggle and giggle, and then he would get up again. Oh. So it was a whole experience of being able to watch this really beautiful play unfold. As you listen, you can hear the nervous system of the baby making waves and calming down and wave. That's just such an important piece of having delight in the world, being resistant to depression, having a sense of meaning, and not being spun out by high energy. Because if nobody ever plays with a baby, then they don't get to know how to manage high energy. And then there's all kinds of nervous system impacts of just like anxiety, just because there's no way to integrate and manage what's happening. Cool that fathers, second parents are responsible for play, for provision, and for protection.
And so the father, would you say it relates to our sense of safety in the world and how we maybe find value in the world, like how we
Absolutely.
find worth?
How we engage, how we bring our energies to engage with the outer world, with community, with group, with the workplace, it's almost like I'm thinking now of gears and the way that you have a transmission and it helps energy to move from one direction to another. Father, with their responsiveness and their play, is creating a transmission within the child that allows their life energy to be changed, to be transmuted into forward motion in whatever way the child wants to be moving in the world, or this particular human wants to.
Beautiful. I remember when we were going through these modules, it was so clear to me how it was showing up in my own life. For example, like, my mother was someone who was very loving, but also sometimes a little smothering.
Oh,
And so I realized that over the course of my life, whenever things showed up in my body, like symptoms in my body, I noticed my attention almost like smothering it.
oh, wow.
Like, what do I have to do to fix it or to get rid of it or to almost like a micromanagement of the body? And I was kind of like a little bit of the loving, smothering mother to my body. And then my father, who is very intellectual, he came from like Austrian lineage, like very intellectual. And so I remember when I would go out into the world, it was always like, how can I share my knowledge? How can I share my intellect? Not my emotion, not my heart, but the power of my mind. And when you were teaching, these imprints, it just made so much sense to me of like how I engaged my inner worlds and how I anticipated being received by the outer world and how I needed to present myself. And so really, really powerful.
And so interesting in terms of what you've been talking about with your coaching journey, that sense that those first 10 years were like, how can I give you my knowledge? This is the thing I have to give.
Right. Right. And so within these constellations, we have what you call unconscious contracts. Can you share with us what an unconscious contract is? And also, I love the way they're worded. It's almost like they feel encoded
They
in
are.
a way that is very specific, very precise.
When we're up against something, some kind of issue, something we can't do, or a pattern that we've noticed that's self-destructive or self-sabotaging, we may very well be up against what I call an unconscious contract. And this is an agreement that we have made with ourselves to do things in a certain way that allows us to accomplish really deeply important, but not conscious relational goals. I think of an unconscious contract a bit like a carrot. You can see the carrot green, a carrot that's growing in the earth. You can see the carrot green, but you don't know what kind of shape the carrot has until you pull it out. It's got an individual shape. And so we walk around in a field full of carrot greens where we see what we're doing, but we don't know what the shape of the carrots are underneath the ground. For example, what have I been up against lately? Yeah. So I have a husband who's quite ill. And so all of my contracts about both all of the agreements that I've made about how to care for somebody else and whether or not I get any care in such a situation are at play. That's the carrot field that I'm walking in. Is I can see all of these waving greens of the ways that I care for my husband, the way that I don't care for him, the way that I don't care for myself, the way I do care for myself. How is all of this happening? We all live within the safety zone of our unconscious contracts, which have been made, it's almost like they've been learned rather than made. They've been developed and learned because they were the best possible way of dealing with our family of origin. So we look at what we're doing. I, Sarah, solemnly swear to my essential self that I will both put my husband first, but also keep from fully connecting with him. Like, care contract is something like, a closed fist, kind of moving an open hand towards somebody. There's a kind of this way that I tighten down because agony is more than I can bear. So I get to say, I, Sarah, solemnly swear to my essential self. Then these are the words this is the formulation that Greg was just talking. I, Sarah, solemnly swear to my essential self, I will care for my husband while withholding my full heart. And we do the in order to. Now, when we say the words in order to, we're alerting our brain to the idea that there's a carrot underneath the earth. We're like, oh, shoot, there's a carrot there. I never thought of that. I just thought this was something I did, that this was who I was, my personality. I would kind of give with a closed fist, not violently, not like hitting somebody, but just like, here, you can have this. And so now I get to say, how did this behavior save me or save my mom or save my dad? And for me, it's like, I will do this in order to be able to take as much care of my mother as I can without being vulnerable to the vibrations of her insanity. So I will keep my body very tight and closed at the same time that I'm very aware of and taking care of her in order not to be pulled into the screaming chaos of incoherence that was at the core of my mother due to very early childhood trauma. So now all of a sudden I know something new about myself. Like I knew that I was doing the caring with a closed fist, what the carrot was. So now I've pulled the carrot out of the earth. And in fact, what we're doing with our brains is that we make these contracts non-verbally. So they live in the basal ganglia. They live in procedural memory. It's just like when you're riding a bike and you're a kid and you learn to ride a bike that has a foot brake. And then when you want to stop, you pedal backwards. And then you get to be a grown-up and they give you a big bike with handbrakes. And you get on it for the first time and you're going down a hill and you start pedaling backwards. But it doesn't work. So this is kind of where we are with these contracts. We're all pedaling backwards down hills going, where the heck are the brakes? I don't have no idea. So we need to be able to update our procedural memory. And we can do that by actually giving words to the experience. Because when it's on the ground, we can't see its shape and we can't decide whether or not we want to eat it. So we pull it out and we go, oh, Sarah, how do you like this contract? And I go, wow, that was a very good contract when I was a little girl. It is not so helpful for my sweet husband now. Now, what's interesting is that so often when we pull these carrots out and we go, yeah, that's an expired contract. That's a carrot I don't need in this field anymore. But what will I do instead? So now we need the blessing. Because my body's like, sure, I don't really want this, but I know what to do. So now we begin to offer something new. And we say, I release this contract, I revoke this vow. And I give you my blessing instead, Sarah. It's almost like that closed fist let me rest while giving. It kept me safe while giving. So now I'm going to invite myself to give fully and to rest fully. And to give fully, just to explore. It's like we can do a gentle exploration invitation. I invite you, Sarah, to explore opening fully and closing gently and fully. The opening fully and closing gently. And then I check and see whether my body likes it. What's the experience? And my body is like, yeah, I like this. There's probably more here because I can feel like an opening in the front of my chest, but kind of still some closedness in the back of my chest. And then toward my back, just needs more holding. But that's an example of the way that the unconscious contract works, and an example of the wording. I swear to myself that I will do this thing in order to, no matter the cost to us. Do I want this contract? No, not too much. I release this contract. I revoke it vow. I give myself the blessing. Some people like the word invitation. Give myself invitation to.
Beautiful.
And sometimes people are like, that's very white, Sarah. That's very white and it's very legal. I am going to say, fuck this shit. And they say it and it works perfectly well. So that also is a possibility.
I love that. You know, when you were sharing one of the things, and thank you for sharing an example from your own life. I really appreciate that. A few things that were coming up for me. Number one is it seems like these unconscious contracts are once upon a time our adaptive strategies. They're how we survived. And it,
How we survived alone in a world where we're not supposed to be alone.
right, right. And it seems as though these contracts that once ensured our life can eventually become the biggest threat to our life.
Oh, that's so true.
And it's kind of like there's this arc that these contracts take of like benefit, 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 and then cost, 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 cost. Because that's why I was really curious about the encoding of it. I will do X, Y, or Z in order to achieve this benefit, no matter the cost. And it's almost like, is there like a cost benefit ratio that you're kind of like playing with? And like once the scales tip, then the contract needs to change?
With the initial contract, we're managing without enough resonance. We're making a contract to compensate. There being no accompaniment, no resonance. If there's accompaniment and resonance, we don't actually have to make these contracts. If somebody were with me, with my mom being crazy, if somebody were with me going, yeah, your mom's, of course this would be kind of scary sometimes. Would you like something? No, it's really confusing. Then I don't have to make that contract to be closed. I'm just like, oh, yeah, I'm a little crazy. Instead of sort of trying to make her sane, which is what I did for the first 18 years of my life, trying to find the way in which she was sane and I was. Part of what we're seeing is child is in a nervous system unit with their mom or dad. And as grow into being their own person in a nervous system unit with the mom or dad. As they grow out being in that nervous system communion or this kind of full joining, merging state, then the environment changes. And as the environment changes, the contract becomes more self-sabotaging. But if we were people who are still living with their moms in their 60s are going to have contracts that still work really well in terms of staying close in people who've never had any resonance. Most often, as people begin to learn resonant healing and step into this experience of being changed, then the contract, the invitation becomes, I give you my invitation or my blessing to know that you have new neurons, that you don't have to compensate for there being no neurons anymore, that you get to mourn. You get to mourn that your mom is saying, and you get to mourn. And there's a little, you don't have to fight it. You just get to be with it. And because you've got more neurons, it's possible. It wasn't possible when we were investing with those contracts.
Yeah, beautiful. And in some of my study and training in archetypes, based on Caroline Miss's work, we have these 4 survival archetypes that kind of are really the foundation, almost like the root chakra, like the foundation of survival and safety and security. And one of them is the saboteur, and how we learn to sabotage ourselves for our own survival. And going into the coaching world for many years and a lot of like personal development and self-help, and there's such an emphasis on habit change and taking these sabotaging behaviors that we perceive to be bad for me or negative or coming at a cost, and trying to coach myself into a more positive behavior, into a more positive choice. There's benefit to that. There's, it's great intention. But one thing that I found is you can try and make behavior changes or habit changes. And a lot of times we end up failing, we end up sabotaging, and we start beating ourselves up over it. It comes with shame, it comes with feeding this inner critic.
Yeah, of course.
But when we identify these contracts, we see the hidden benefits of like, oh, this negative sabotaging behavior, once I can see the benefit of it, I can see the unmet needs and I can have compassion.
Yeah.
And so I wonder, and I'd love your perspective on this, before we try and make habit change, is it really essential to understand the hidden benefits of our sabotaging behaviors before trying to change them too quickly?
Yeah. I'm getting the image of like, you've got your little carrot garden and you're telling the greens, go that way. Greens, grow that way. Without ever getting the carrot out of the ground and looking to see if it's carrot that you want in your garden or not. So kind of delights me. This idea delights me. That if we take the carrot out, we get to do some really interesting discovery and self-connection. Another really interesting piece of this puzzle of habit change and even addiction is that, again, we are not the individuals that we think we are. We are extraordinarily interconnected, not just with the people in our world, but with the substances and activities in our world. So, when you get in your car, your brain expands your body map to include your car, which is why it can be, if you get in an unfamiliar car, you can end up bumping into things that you wouldn't normally bump into. Your integrated body map hasn't quite updated to the new car. Or people who play the violin or the cello. There's a cello in the back of my room. When they start to play their instrument, any instrument, just stringed instruments, that it becomes a part of the integrated body. And so also with like substances and behaviors, they become a part of us. So we want to know not just what's our carrot, but what's the carrot of the substance or behavior. So I've been thinking about this with sugar lately. A new piece of research came out about sugar, that sugar molecules are supposed to make fat. If we have enough abundance in our environment to be having sugar, then we should be storing up for what's coming next. So then sugar has a contract to do that. That's what sugar does. If sugar is a part of me, as it has been a regulating part of me in a world without resonance, then that thing that sugar does also is a part of me. We and look and see sort of both the contracts that cause us to do the thing, whatever the habit is, but we also get to look at like the neurobiology of whatever the habit is or what non-habit is, because there can be so many interesting things. Like where we get to acknowledge not just the deep need that we're meeting by doing this habit, like for Sarah to acknowledge not just the deep need that's being met with relaxation and comfort and ease when I get to have something sweet, but also like there's this whole other cascade of things that's happening, an unconscious part of that whole. Do you want to name a particular habit that you're thinking of, and then we can kind of take this apart? Or I thought of sugar for myself, but I don't know if something that would make it more something people often get coached about.
I was thinking about one for myself.
Oh,
One that comes up for me is actually similar to one that you had shared for yourself, is caretaking or showing up for others at the expense of myself.
Oh,
So that might be one that
yeah.
comes up.
So if we've got a beautiful, fat, lovely carrot under the that is saying, I will do this in order to, maybe something like, in order to care for my mother, but like even bigger, the image I get is of water finding the level. Like that, for example, your integrity is such that you can't just raise your water. It's not even physically possible for you to just raise your water. You're connected to all the other waters. So the power and the strength needs to go, and the care needs to go to the lower level so that everybody's water can come up. What happens for you with that gas? You get to just take it and say, my in order to is...
My in order to is I will care for others at the expense of myself in order to secure my value, in order to protect myself from guilt. I think that's a big one. In order to not be the target of someone else's pain, no matter the cost to myself.
And do you need a little acknowledgement that indeed you were targeted for another person?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what a fabulous vow this was.
Yeah.
And then now that you've named it, what we want to know is whether your body got involved. And so may I ask, how does your body do when you say those words?
There's definitely a vibration of truth. Like the contract is true and it brought me relief at times. So I can definitely feel just the truth of the contract in my body.
So then we get to say, essential self of Greg. So this is our central, most untraumatized self that wants the best for us. How do you like this contract? Do you want to keep it?
No, I don't want to keep it. So I could really feel the cost of it starting to increase over time.
So then you get to say, I release you from this contract. I revoke this vow. Or you get to say, fuck this shit.
Fuck this shit. Fuck this contract. I release it.
Mm.
And instead of this contract, I offer myself the blessing of self-care and spaciousness to attend to my needs.
It gives me a deep breath. How does it do for you?
There's a nice exhale. Yeah, so thank you for taking me through that briefly. Just, I think it was really beautiful for the listeners to get to experience that in real time. Beautiful. The other thing that came up for me when you were talking about sugar is one of the most common challenges in my family has been sugar addiction. Going back like a few generations, like my mother and even siblings or family members. And so some addictive patterning. And one of the things that really struck a chord for me in the emergent constellation training was when you talked about these contracts when the flow of attunement between parent and child reverses, where the child has a contract to almost become the caretaker of the parent, and the flow of energy, reverses. Instead of parent to child, goes from child to parent. And what that does in the brain with like the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala. And I'm curious if, because I've seen this a lot with clients ever since I learned this from you, if that reversal can really open up the door for addiction. I'd love for you to expand on that a little bit.
Yeah. Our addictions speak to us about how deeply we are connected with this world.
Mm.
So each different addiction addresses relational deficit.
Mm.
The thing that sugar does more than anything else, supplies sense of warmth and well-being, a flow of oxytocin and endogenous opioids. Sugar, salt, and fat all do this. And we have the experience of a mother who needs care and a child who realizes the mother needs care. And the child, instead of being able to turn toward their life, turns towards the mother to try to care for her. But the child still needs to be receiving from someone.
Mm.
And if the child discovers that they can receive from sugar and be able to maintain sort of backward flow of love to their mother, then that's a great solution. And then that, of course, can continue on. And then when we're working with substances, we can even look at the contracts they have to take care of us. So then, because remember how a car becomes a part of us, sugar becomes a part of us. And whatever becomes a part of us can have a contract.
Mm.
And so the sugar then has a contract. I sugar solemnly swear that I will take care of you, Greg's family, in order to make up for the flow of love that couldn't travel from generation to generation, but got turned and is trying to go the wrong way. The sugar is like, it's like supporting the whole family to have this different orientation that doesn't let the children turn towards the outer world. And the sugar can do this because it's part of our world. It's not something foreign. It's not something strange. Part of us. It's a part of our extended body in relationship with the plant. What we can begin to do is both work with contracts that sugar has to take care of us and see if we want to release those, because those are, I, sugar, solemnly swear that I will take care of you no matter, in order to make for there being no flow of love to the children, no matter the cost to you, says sugar.
Mm. Mm.
It always makes me laugh. And then so ruthless. And so then we can say, oh yes, sugar, I release you from this contract. I revoke this vow. Sugar can step down and not be such a part of the family system. People can begin to, the client, whoever the client is operating for their family as a whole in a way, gets to begin to turn towards their own life instead of being turned towards their mother's.
Beautiful. Beautiful. I love how you brought in the contract that sugar has. And it reminds me of, I've spent many years kind of exploring the realm of shamanism. And in shamanism, everything carries a spirit. So the spirit of sugar, the spirit of tobacco, so there are these spirits, this consciousness of sugar that carries a contract just like we carry contracts. It just makes everything so alive.
Yes.
Which is really beautiful.
As I travel this path, it only takes me deeper and deeper into animism. It's wonderful and excruciating.
Absolutely. So the last stop that I'd love to kind of take on our journey together, which has been an area of real fascination for me because of my own personal journey, which is how we have these constellations, especially going back to our family of origin, and how much we unconsciously replicate them.
Oh, yes.
Well into adulthood.
Oh, well into until we die.
Yeah. And so it reminds me of, I think it was a quote from Carl Jung that something around until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you'll call it fate. And it really, taking the emergent constellation training with you, really just highlighted how much we replicate our constellations, just the names and faces change.
Yeah.
And so I'd love for you to touch on why we do that, how we do that, and what the maybe hidden opportunities are in really recognizing that?
What what a wonderful question. This is where the area that I've been working in for the past couple of days. I had a friend who got really mad at me and dissolved the friendship. And I was describing it to another friend of mine. And he said, Sarah, that's all mother stuff. That your friend is mad at you because you aren't a good enough mother. And that means that they're not doing their work to be able to claim their own power and responsibility. And I was like, oh, I can see that. And so I carried that in my pocket. That was like 2 or 3 years ago that my friend said that. We've been carrying that around in my pocket. And then just recently, I had the opportunity to think about an old relationship that I had forgotten about. And I thought, oh, I've been so irritated with that person for not coming into my emotional world, for never having an imagination about my emotional world, which, of course, was my mother. So I thought, I've been thinking, I was sitting at breakfast this morning and I was like, oh my God, I have all these friendships that I've made where I get irritated because they're not thinking about me. And voila, I made those friendships. Those are people that I chose to be with. Those people don't have a relational imagination. It's just not there. And I was being self-responsible, and I was just like, and look at me creating these friendships. And then, 3-5 years in going, there's a kind of a release, that happens as we begin to see that the way in which we're replicating what we knew when we were little. I mean, it just comes back to this idea that we are metaphor, that we're made of metaphor. And so the issues that we have and the problems that we have with people are metaphors for the places where our brains are tied in knots and need to be untied and untangled so that we can become whoever it was brains were meant to be in their snowflake, completely unique incarnation in the world.
Beautiful. When you were sharing that, the image that I was having is just all of us walking around, and we have these invisible fields that contain our constellations, our ancestors, our contracts. And these fields almost like are communicating with each other beyond our conscious awareness. And if my field and your field have something within them that almost fit together like a glove, that is there, like almost like an unconscious magnetism
Absolutely.
that kind of pulls them together.
Yeah.
Is that what's happening?
Yeah, and I love that the word familiar has the word family.
Right.
Yes, we find what feels right. Of course, we find those matches of what our unconscious contract, make easy for us. I'm thinking that I probably have a contract not to exist. I swear to myself that I will not exist relationally for others. Or maybe I will believe it's impossible for me to exist in order to save myself from heartbreak, from the heartbreak and loneliness of being my mama's daughter.
Yeah. Beautiful. Well, Sarah, this was such a wonderful conversation, and I thank you so much for all of your work and all of your love and wisdom and everything that you're, sharing with the world. It's touched my life and those around me in such a profound way. So I just wanted to personally thank you for that.
Oh, Greg, thank you so much. It's just a pleasure to be here with you. What a wonderful conversation.
And if people would like to learn more about your work, take some of your courses, attend some of your workshops, where would you like to direct people?
Sure. Well, with my husband so ill, I've been mostly working online and don't get out and teach in the world so very much right now. But so mostly you can find me online, sort of wonderful because people can work with me from all over the world. The only problem is time zones, of course. And you can find me at sarahpeyton.com. And it shows you kind of the unfolding classes. There are classes in Constellations and there are classes in relational neuroscience and resonant language. As you get involved in one or the other, then sort of the other one starts to stir and come farther forward because there's something so, we're so interestingly, yes, integrated with the world. We bodies are part of the world, and so we need both to be able to look very specifically, warmly, and precisely. And we also need to be able to look systemically and interwovenly.
Beautiful. Sarah, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you, Greg.